I want to welcome you to our program today. Our special guest that we have, her name is Sherri Kubly. Yeah, so Sherri, good to have you with us this day, and she's got quite a testimony. She does speaking. She speaks for Stonecroft Ministries, and the title of her message that she brings is Dumb to Dynamic. And so I guess Dumb to Dynamic, you know, that's quite an interesting title. I think that's one that engages us to say, well, explain that, okay? And so, well, anyway, it sounds like you've got quite a testimony that goes all the way back to the time when you were very little.
Yes. When I was 6 years old, my stepfather had me believe in the lie that I was dumb. He even nicknamed me Dumbo. All of my family and my friends and neighbors, they all called me Dumbo. And by the time I was 9 years old, I had gotten drunk on beer by the time I was 6 and started smoking cigarettes when I was 9. I was sexually abused by a family member. I was on street drugs, went to 12 different schools, all by the time I was 17. And it was a really tough childhood.
Yeah, I was going to say, a very tough upbringing, and you know, it just, so you said you had a stepfather that called you Dumbo,
Yep.
and then other people then caught on to that, almost like that gave everybody permission, and so that would put you down, and your whole self-image and everything about yourself must have been in a very bad state, and then that led to a lot of things.
I never excelled in anything.
Yeah. Well, how could you when you are kind of given that kind of an image of yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that led to things like you say, alcohol and drug abuse, and
Yep.
you've been abused sexually, and so and also just being placed around in many different schools. Just
Yep.
how difficult that would be. You said you were in how many? 12?
12 schools.
So it's almost like you're in a school every year.
Almost. I didn't have any friends. It was really hard to have friends because by the time I got to know somebody, I moved to another school.
And why was all that moving around?
Mostly playing the game between my parents, my mom and my stepdad, and my real father, just going back and forth.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was just yearning for a love. I had such a void in my heart. And I came up with a really good plan. After all, I was a teenager and I knew it all. I decided when I was 16 years old that the way to fill that void was to get pregnant. I just knew if I had a baby, that the baby would love me and need me unconditionally. And so at the age of 17, I gave birth to my son, Jesse. And I gained almost 100 pounds with that pregnancy. And it was short after I gave birth to Jesse that this comment was made to me that I look like a fat cow. And that just knocked me right off of my feet. And that led me into anorexia. I not only lost that under 100 pounds, but I also turned to alcohol to drown my pain. And it wasn't before long that my alcoholism turned into bulimia. And I was just searching for a way to fill that void, and I knew that my son was not going to fill that void. I was just going down a spiral of, I knew it wasn't going to be long before my body was going to shut down. And shortly after Jesse was a year old, I left his father. And because I was still searching for a way to fill that void, I found another man, and I became pregnant with my second son. And I was really, really concerned because not only wasn't I an alcoholic and I smoked and bulimic, I was really concerned about this pregnancy. And it was a true miracle that Mitchell was born a healthy 9-pound bundle of joy. Yes. And his father and I did get married in the courthouse shortly after I got pregnant. And Mitchell was 3, and his dad and I decided to mutually get a divorce because I just wanted more for my boys. And it was really, really important to me that my children went to one school and not 12 schools or even 4 schools. I wanted them to go to one school. And at the time, I had a really good, stable job at a bank. And with the help of the bank that I worked at and an FHA loan, I was able to build a brand new house for my boys and to give them the stability, that stability that I was still searching for myself.
Sure.
And so I got the house built, and nobody knew about my addictions, and nobody knew that I was anorexia. Or
nobody knew, I mean, that you could kind of conceal all of this?
I did. Nobody knew. And I couldn't tell anybody because I knew that my boys would be taken away. I knew they would. And I couldn't let that happen. But I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I remember just praying and saying, God, if you're real, if you love me, show yourself to me, reveal yourself to me. And it was just a few days later, I'm sitting at the bank that I worked at, minding my own business, and I looked out at the ATM, and I saw this really good-looking guy out there, and it got my attention. I sat straight up in my chair, and he finished his business, and he walked out the door, and I thought, oh, I'll never see him again. I live in a town of 800 people, and I work in a bank, so I thought I knew everybody, so I figured he was just passing through, and I'd never see him again. Well, a week later, I was at my son Jesse's 2nd grade overnight reading program at school, and I'm sitting on the floor with Jesse in my lap, and you will never believe who was sitting across the gym floor with a little girl on his lap. The cute guy from the ATM. I was so excited, I just couldn't believe it. And my neighbor lady came up and asked if I would like to be introduced to him. She must have saw that I was like staring at him or something. I'm not really sure.
It's always good to have a neighbor lady like that, right?
That's right. So she introduced the two of us, and he had made the comment, well, I hope that it's okay that I use your ATM because I don't bank there. And I'm like, you can use it every day if you want to. And it was just really neat to meet him. So then a week later, I'm waiting for him to call me, and with no phone call, I decided to take matters in my own hand. At that time, you could pick up the phone and call information. So I picked up the phone, I got his number, and I called him, and I was shocked to find out he lived 3 blocks from me.
Oh, wow.
I know. So I made something up to the fact that something wasn't built right in my new house, and I knew he was a contractor, so I asked him if he wanted to come over, and so he did. He came over, and I had a pot of coffee made, and we got to know each other over a couple pots of coffee, I believe. And I remember just sensing something about him that was different than anyone else I'd ever known. He just had such a peace about him. And I asked him what church he went to, as if going to the right church was going to make things right for my life.
Because here again, you've been searching for things, your whole life. There's been this emptiness. You've been put down by the people that should be building you up and trying to find this, okay, yeah, it just sounds like you've been searching, thinking, well, maybe it has something to do with the church, and you've been asking the question, God, if you're real, then let me know.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go on.
And I thought it was the church. And he looked at me with his big blue eyes, and he said, it's not a matter of where you go to church, it's a matter of having that personal relationship with Jesus in your heart. I didn't quite understand what he meant, because I really not went to church very much, and I've never read a Bible in my entire life. And so I asked him what he meant, and he says, do you believe that there's a God? And I'm like, yeah, I believe there's a God. And he said, well, do you believe that Jesus is his son? And I wasn't real sure about that. I wasn't sure where Jesus fit into the picture other than seeing him on statues in church. And so he shared with me that Jesus was his only son, and he was perfect, and that he died on the cross so that my sins can be forgiven. And he said, "Do you believe you're a sinner?" Well, I didn't want to go there. And I knew I was a sinner, and I said, "Yeah, I know I'm a sinner." And he said, "Well, he died on the cross so that your sins can be forgiven. And all you have to do is ask him to forgive you of your sins." Okay. Well, he gave me a lot of good information, but I really didn't understand it all. And I wasn't quite sure how that was going to change things for me. And so it wasn't a couple weeks later that I'm sitting at my table at 11 o'clock at night and drinking a glass of wine, because I thought, well, I get rid of the beer and I'll wean myself to wine. And I just decided I couldn't do it no more. I tried to clean up my life on my own, and I couldn't do it. Not even close. The harder I tried, the worse I became. So I just prayed my heart out to God. And Kevin didn't explain to me how you needed to pray. He just said you had to ask him to forgive you of your sins. So I'm like, okay. So I thought I had to go back to like my sins from when I was like 4 years old. So I'm like, forgive me for sneaking out of the house and going down the street and climbing over the fence, and forgive me for stealing the gum out of the cabinet. And I was going on and on trying to remember every sin. Oh, no. And I remember my eyes were just, my cheeks were soaked with tears, and my eyes were completely dry because I couldn't think of another sin. And it felt like 1,000,000 pounds of dirty laundry lifted from my shoulders. It was so amazing. And I knew right then that God forgave me of all my sins. I knew that I was white as snow. And like I said, I've never read a Bible, didn't own a Bible. And the next morning at like 5 o'clock, I was so excited to call everybody in that had shared Christ with me, Kevin, and I had another friend who had shared, but I really didn't understand it until my eyes were open to the truth. And I let them know, and they got me a Bible. And Kevin and I dated for 2 years before we got married. And so I brought 2 boys into the marriage, and he brought 2 girls into the marriage. And together we have 10 grandchildren. Wow. I know, they're such a blessing. We should have had them first. Now I know where they come up with it. They're just so much fun. Yeah. And you know, they talk about being step parents or being in a step family. And it's tough. It is so tough. And I tell you what, divorce was never an option. We talked about that right when we got married. It was not an option at all. But I have to admit, I packed my bag once. Not that I wanted a divorce, but I just needed to get away for a couple days because I just didn't know how to deal with being a stepmom and how to deal with all of the emotions that come with it, and how do I fit into the picture. And we've just went after one crazy ride after another. And one of the ways that I kind of explain it is like an old roller coaster. If you can imagine being on a roller coaster and it's taking you around and jerking you, and you're going up and down, and you get butterflies and feel nauseous all at the same time. Yeah. That's kind of what it's like being in a step family situation. And probably the craziest ride that Kevin and I have been on was 2 years ago when I noticed Kevin having some different doing things differently. And you have to understand that we work together 24/7. We play together, we pray together, we do everything together. So I notice if there's anything different. And what took years to train him to close the cabinet doors and to put the seat down in the toilet and zipper up his zipper. I mean, he knew that from the time he was potty trained. And he was forgetting all of these things, and I thought that there was something wrong. And so we went to the doctor, And I said, there's something wrong. He's forgetting all of these things. And then she just looked at us and says, well, he's just depressed. We'll put him on some antidepressants. And I just thought to myself, how in the world could he be depressed? He's married to me.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
And so they did put him on antidepressants and some other different medical things. And he wasn't finding any improvement. And we're building a house, and it took him 3 times to build a wall, which he could do in his sleep normally. And so we finally went to a different doctor, and I had shared with them, that I thought we needed to do an MRI. And all along they suggested that he doesn't need an MRI, he was depressed. Well, this new doctor suggested we do a sleep test, that sleep apnea causes forgetfulness and all of these things. And so we did that, and he passed with flying colors, which meant he didn't have sleep apnea. Well, that presents a problem because he still has all these issues. And so I don't know if you can accidentally lie, but I did lie to the doctor over the phone, and I said, well, he's having extreme headaches. I think he needs to do an MRI. And when it came out of my mouth, I was just shocked. I'm like, Sherri, I cannot believe you just lied to the doctor. But I got what I wanted, and within an hour, they had scheduled an MRI, which we had done the following week on Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas Eve 2 years ago. And so we went to Cedar Rapids to Mercy, had the MRI, and waited about an hour or so, and they came out, and they said that Kevin needed to be admitted immediately for treatment, that he had a brain tumor. And we weren't quite sure what that all meant. What kind of brain tumor, where is it, how big is it? We really weren't sure. All I knew is we were going home and we were going to have Christmas with our family. And so I suggested they call back the next day with an alternative plan, which they did. And so we saw an oncologist in Cedar Rapids, and they showed us the brain tumor was about the size of a tennis ball in the center of his brain in both hemispheres. And he suggested that it would be grade 3 astrocytoma, which to you probably means nothing, and it meant nothing to me. Other than, he said, if he were right, which he sees this all the time, Kevin would have up to 6 months to live and game over. And all I could have go back in my head is game over, game over, game over. And then the next question came up from the doctor. He says, so, when did you start experiencing the headaches? So my daughter and Kevin looked at me, and they're like, how are you going to get yourself out of this one? And I had to fess up and tell them that I lied about the headaches because he never had headaches with it. So they referred us to Mayo Clinic, and he had a biopsy, and it was downgraded from a grade 3 to a grade 2, which is amazing because that gives them a longer life expectancy. And as of a week ago, when we went back, the tumor had started growing again. They put him on a new kind of chemo, and we go back in 8 weeks for another MRI to see where we're at with that. And what has been amazing about this journey is when we found out, we had put all of our liquid assets, all of our money into some real estate property to sell. And we had no money at all other than some loose change in a vintage suitcase. That's what we had to buy bread and milk. And we had a credit card, but I could tell that God had this all orchestrated just perfectly because he wanted to show us that you have to depend on me 100% for everything. And I am going to show you that I am going to take care of everything. To just changing our insurance a year before, and now our insurance covers everything as Christian Healthcare Ministries. They're amazing. And they pray for you, they send you cards, it's amazing. All the way from running out of stamps to send thank you cards to going to the post office and to be a roll or two of stamps in my box, to running out of cards and going to church and a lady handed me a whole bag full of thank you cards and saying, I don't know if you could use these, but you can have them. And that was on my list to do, is get change out of my suitcase to go to Walmart and buy thank you cards.
Sure.
And running out of address labels and getting the mail and going through the junk mail, throwing it in the garbage. And I looked in the garbage, and my love language is gifts. And I saw on the top of the garbage, free gift for you. And I'm like, how did I miss that? So I pulled it out of the garbage, I opened it up, and guess what was in it? Address labels.
Wow.
That was from my insurance company. And my husband says, you're so spoiled, you get everything you want. But you know, God has been so faithful. He has shown us from day one how he has just taken care of every single thing. It's just been neat to see him be glorified through this.
Yeah, you know, you asked the question, God, are you real? And you're wondering, can God help fill a void? Can God help get my life turned around? It's almost like, you know, from Proverbs chapter 3, you know, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. It's like, you know, everything seemed like it was in God's time.
Yeah.
You know, when your life just didn't seem like it was going anywhere from the time that you were a little girl because of all these bad influences that you had upon you. It's just, you know, what a difficult thing, but yet you're crying out, that little child within you crying out. And just like that, you saw something or someone who was attractive. But then you found that this man, or Eric, is attractive in, well, Kevin. That Kevin is attractive in more than one way.
Yes,
you know, that all of a sudden, I mean, it was a physical attraction, but then that led to seeing that there was something attractive about his life. There was something that's special about him. And he kind of thought, well, maybe it's just the church that he's hanging out in, which, you know, a lot of churches are good to hang out in, because you're surrounded by good people, but he said you got to really first and foremost hang out with Jesus, right?
Yep.
And that was the attraction, and it just seemed like the moment you did that, you felt a peace come over you, and you felt like, you know, that God was, you know, guiding you, you know, like guiding you with his light now, and as he continues today.
And one of the neat things where I get the dumb to dynamic is some of the things that God has really helped me overcome is Kevin and I own our own construction company, and I oversee that. I've become a photographer. I do my own custom stained glass, which I taught myself. One of the neat things that I did is wrote a $500,000 grant in 48 hours and received it. And you know, one of the things I share with people, that may or may not seem like a challenge, but I have dyslexia, I get all my numbers mixed up. So to balance a checkbook or to even sometimes write a check, I do the numbers backwards. And so it can be really challenging. So to write a grant of that extent and receive it and not have there wasn't any mistakes or I wouldn't have gotten it. I mean, that was a God thing right there. I mean, he has shown me over and over again that I can do all things through him. He gives me the strength, he gives me the wisdom, and it's just overwhelming how he shows me every day that there is nothing that I can't conquer. And it's not that I'm boasting, I'm not boasting at all. I'm boasting for God.
You're boasting in the Lord. Yeah.
I'm boasting in the Lord.
Look at what he's done to you.
It's just been neat. And, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, you just seem too happy. And I feel really happy. You know, we're going through circumstances, but they're circumstances, and God is being glorified through it. A good friend of ours, Pastor Terry Baxter, shortly within the week when we found out about Kevin, he says, okay, we need to get prayer together. Let's meet at your church. And he's from Garner, Iowa, so he we just threw it on Facebook and said, anybody wants to come to church, and it was packed. I mean, just last minute, it was packed, and people, we were praying, and it was so neat. And one of the things I remember him saying is, or praying, that bless them with a peace that surpasses all understanding. And we have been blessed with that peace that surpasses all understanding from day one. It's just been really neat.
Yeah, it sounds like the peace and also the joy that surpasses all human understanding. I guess we can maybe insert a few more of those words, that only, these things for which only God can give. But, I'd say that Sherri's testimony here is really a powerful one. And I am hoping that for all of us who are listening to this, is that you never give up on yourself.
Right.
Because God doesn't give up on us, that God loves us, and that God will take us and He will bring out that special person that He has created us to be and that He desires and wills for us to be. And that's the whole thing, is just crying out saying, God, is there a different way? And for Sherri, I mean, it's overcoming a lot of stuff, childhood self-worth issues, addictions, anorexia, bulimia, but all of these things to know that God is powerful, working and transforming and guiding to where, Sherri is, living the life for which God has called her. But that, like she says, it doesn't mean that she doesn't have circumstances. She and her husband, Kevin, are dealing with a very difficult thing as he's dealing with a major health issue. But she continues to pray, knowing that God is with her always and guiding her and her husband and family, and always knowing that in all circumstances, God works for the good, and that she can do all things through Jesus who strengthens her, as He can do the same for you. Well, Sherri, so nice to have you today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're really a blessing to so many people, and I want to thank you for joining us this day as well. God be with you.